It's the morning meeting with our guests, Ro Khanna, Congressman from California, Suzanne Pleshette. No, but Ro Khanna is here. Suzanne Pleshette is not. Congressman Khanna will join us this morning. He had two tweets yesterday that caught our eye. One about what's going on with the House Democrats and congressional Democrats and the party at large in the wake of what happened on Tuesday night in the House chamber when the president spoke. It's the morning meeting with another California, Suzanne Pleshette. It's good. But Ro Khanna, we predicted this would happen. Congressman Khanna will join us this morning. He had two tweets yesterday that caught our eye. One about what's going on with the House Democrats and the congressional Democrats. We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, they say on talk radio, turn your radio off.
Yeah, we knew this was going to happen. And then somebody has their YouTube open, is what's happening. So we'll fix that. In any event, in addition to Congressman Khanna, I'm not going to fight through this. One about Paul, what would you like to do? Congressional Democrat.
Yeah, they say on talk radio, turn your radio.
Give me a second, I'll find the source.
All right, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. This is what we call a technical diffdifficulty, which we knew was going to happen today for a variety of reasons.
This was a great bit, Mark. Nice job.
It was worth repeating. Paul, what would you like to do?
Talk radio, turn your
Give me
radio.
a second, I'll find the source.
All right, everybody. It's a rerun. It's what we call a technical difficulty, which it was going to happen today for a variety of reasons.
This was a great bit, Mark. Nice job.
Oh, my goodness. Worth repeating.
Not sure where that's coming from, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute some people and see if we can get to the bottom of it.
All right.
Give me a second, I'll find the source.
All right. It's a rerun. What we call a technical difficulty, which it was going to happen today.
This was a great bit, Mark. Nice job.
Oh, my goodness. Worth repeating.
Not sure where that's coming from, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute some.
Um,
Give me a second, I'll find the source.
It's a rerun. We're all going to sit in silence and meditate.
Goodness. Not sure where it's coming from, Mark. I'm going to mute some.
All right. Going to sit in silence and meditate. How we doing, guys? Our apologies. We knew in the pregame we had technical gremlins.
It's China.
Is it fixed?
I believe it might be. Give it a shot.
All right.
Mark.
Let's sit in silence and meditate. How we doing, guys?
We are
Our
not.
apologies. We
Hold on.
knew in the pregame we had technical.
It's China.
Is it fixed?
I believe it might be. Give it a shot.
Yeah. Irony.
I'm going to try one more thing, Mark, and hopefully it works.
Apologies.
Someone's saying it's my mic.
Sean, mute yourself for a second.
He just did. Oh, yeah.
Sean's mic? Is that what was doing it? Magical mic. All right, let's proceed on the assumption that perhaps it's fixed. And again, thank you for your patience. Congressman Khanna will be here with us to talk about his two tweets. And I'm going to run through the day book. The president today has got a lot going on. I wouldn't be surprised if he made a ton of news because he is signing executive orders at 2:30. That is supposedly, you can skip over that. That is supposedly closed press, but we know how that goes. And then he's delivering remarks at 3 at the White House Digital Assets Summit. This is a very big deal for the crypto community. They're meeting all day. The president's dropping in and speaking, and then he departs for Mar-a-Lago. Sunday, he's on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo. Sean, I don't know if you can risk unmuting, but
I did.
Okay, let's see what happens. Sean, why does Maria book so well? Why does the Republican world flock to a cable show on Sunday mornings that is not, Meet the Press?
because everyone knows the president watches Maria Bartiromo. So therefore, I mean, it's sort of like her morning show on Fox Business as well. There's the president, watches both. So she's going to book great guests because people know that it's an opportunity to basically have a conversation with him in a very unfiltered way.
House and Senate are out today. The Fed chair speaks at 12:30 to the U.S. Monetary Policy Forum to give his outlook on the economy. The February jobs report came out a little while ago. Paul, what did those numbers show?
They showed audio issues, and I couldn't look it up.
All right.
151 is the number.
Yeah. It was an okay
expected.
number. It was an okay number, not a great number.
Expectation was 160.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about a few things. Go ahead and put up the White House pool. We always like to talk about that. While Congressman Khanna will join us in just a moment. Sean, daily exercise. Who do you see on the pool there that catches your eye in the newly configured pool?
Well, in the new media seat, it's Decrypt Media, which sort of does politics, business. It's not a big one, but I think it's because of the crypto event today. So it's really plays in that. And then obviously, I am sort of intrigued that Politico is playing the role of print. That's not, normally you get the Washington Post, LA Times, New York Times, and I considering some of the issues. And then Real America's Voice is what the secondary TV correspondent and crew are, where it says RAV. The out-of-town pool is because he's traveling. So those are the guys that are going to be at Andrews when he lands there. Those would be, so you've got your Reuters and wires and photos. NBC is the cool News Nation doing the secondary pool. And then NRO, as the new media, is National Review Online.
Dan, do you know Kristen Welker, the moderator of Meet the Press? Do you know her?
Yes. Yep.
Lovely person. Lovely
Yes.
person. Sean and I have a particular fascination with the Meet the Press Roundtable and how they book that. So let's put up this coming Sunday's Meet the Press Roundtable.
Right in your wheelhouse
And
here.
Sean, you and I sometimes notice that the roundtable doesn't necessarily reflect who is in the White House. So tell us about this. It's Courtney Kube, who covers Pentagon, I think.
Pentagon.
For NBC News. Jonathan Martin, Politico. Simone Sanders and Townsend, and Mark Short. So where would you rate this on the fairness scale of to discuss the Trump administration?
So just a real quick, I mean, Courtney's, I've interacted with her, I've through tours of the Pentagon. She's a great military correspondent. She's got a lot of scoops. I mean, some people have their issues with her, but I think generally speaking, she's a pretty fair reporter. Her wheelhouse is obviously the Pentagon, and they're going to pick on a lot of Pentagon stuff this week. Jonathan Martin, I think, at Politico, he's done stints all over, New York Times, et cetera. I think there's no question, no one would ever argue that he is on the Trump side of the equation. He's fairly anti-Trump. Simone Sanders is the woman down in the left. She was Kamala's spokeswoman. And then Mark Short is this old Politico hand down in the bottom there. Was Vice President Pence's chief of staff on both Capitol Hill and then in the president's and in the White House. So I mean, he's a very experienced political guy, no question about it. But he's in the Pence camp. So you basically have represented there a very anti-Trump panel. And again, the issue here for me as a person is that don't try to present yourself as a show that's giving insight when you've got a moderator that's anti-Trump in Kristen, and then you have a panel that's anti-Trump. It's just, it's over and over and over again. There's no attempt to actually try to explain the Trump perspective. It is just why he sucks, why he's bad, why he's horrible. And so you've got a moderator leading the charge in Kristen, and then a panel that's going to be, for all the talk about being sycophants, they basically have a bunch of people that are going to get on there and talk about how bad Trump is. And viewers are given a disservice.
Dan, what do you think of that critique?
Oh, it's spot on. I mean, whether or not some of those people are anti-Trump, like I don't know, but there's no pro-Trump person on there. I mean that, and when he's in the White House and Republicans control all of Congress, and Congress is pretty deferential to Trump, you would imagine you would have at least one, if not two, pro-Trump voices, and they have neither.
You got to wonder whether they tried for that and no one would agree to come on, or
No,
whether they
no, no,
didn't?
no. Look at the other shows. I mean,
Yeah.
first of
Oh,
all,
people would go on Meet the Press for sure.
yeah, of course they would, because the president's going to watch it. So for the same reason, I mean, like he's not going to watch the whole thing. He DVRs everything. But at the end of the day, you know, you're going to want to get, I mean, there's millions of as much as I despise a lot of folks who go on there, because I think it's giving oxygen to left-wing media. There are plenty of members of Congress, former members, politicos that would go on there to give that perspective. But week after week, that's what Meet the Press does.
All right, 106, please.
And look, can I just say one last thing? I will say
Plus,
this.
if you
They have
throw
a
enough
right-
money at
look,
it, somebody will become a regular.
No. But it's here. They have a right to do that. This is protected. You know, they have a right. I'm just saying, don't ever think that Meet the Press or NBC is actually trying to be balanced and fair. Every time they spew that, they're lying. They're gaslighting the American people. They have an opportunity to invite guests on. They choose not to.
All right, here's a Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Barrett. Again, raise your hand if you want in on the conversation, including when Congressman Khanna joins us shortly. She ruled, as we talked about yesterday, I think, in a 5-4 decision, along with Chief Justice Roberts and the 3 Democratic affiliated justices, against President Trump. And MAGA has already started coming after her. And some people are speculating, legal people and folks in MAGA land and me, that if she chooses to continue to rule in 5-4 against the president, then MAGA is going to come after her even harder. So, Dan, if you were an advisor to Justice Barrett and she said, I want to rule the way I want to rule, but I also don't want people outside my house and death threats and to be dragged constantly, is there anything she can do? Is there any advice you'd give her about how to handle herself, give a speech, or just stay within the 4 corners of rulings?
Yeah, stay within the 4 corners, because the problem is she's not a politician. Now, justices are getting kind of closer and closer to this a little bit, but I think if she came out and tried to do a PR campaign, it would be problematic for a whole nother set of reasons. Look, Trump's very open about working the referees, as he likes to say. And, you know, this is about, you know, if you bully and you bully and you bully, that she will say, for my politics within the party, I need to find a way to throw a bone to the other side, even when I might not necessarily think it's the right legal reason. So, you know, this is part of the MO. I mean, they're not going to stop doing this. I would hope that she would rule as she sees kind of legally fit or legally right. But the Trump people are not going to stop this. This is just how they operate.
Well, I think I had a panel discussion on my show last night with a bunch of people asking the same question. And I think that there's 2 camps. There's some that believe that she's going to be a thorn in his side, and some people have already determined that. And some look at the decision and say, okay, the money was obligated. There is an argument to be made that, hey, you have the right to do it in the future, but not on the funds that have already been appropriated by Congress. And so there's sort of the jury's out view, and I think that's kind of where the 2 camps come down on there. Is this a one-off ruling because of the nuance of it, or is this a pattern that's about to begin?
Well, but what is a pattern, though, is with other justices, there's talk on the right of impeaching them. Like it is, if you don't do what we said, like basically judges are politicians, you're on our team, thus you have to constantly rule in favor of us against Democrats. And if you don't, we are going to target you with every tactic that we use for politicians, because I don't think they respect the independence of the judiciary in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we'll see.
And
I don't
so,
think
look, I'm asking.
I mean,
I'm
you're
asking
just going after them.
I'm asking a slightly different question, maybe. If she were my friend, I'd call her up today and I'd say, you need a plan. Because if you just go about your business ruling 5-4 against the president, things are gonna really escalate, and it's gonna be uncomfortable for you. So
Yeah,
you
but
need
I
a
mean,
plan.
look, but
And
Mark,
we're not in an age. Supreme Court justices give speeches all the time now.
Of course.
And you say the rules are you're just supposed to stay within the 4 corners. And the fact is the rules for the people harassing them have changed. In the old
But
days,
Mark,
you wouldn't be harassed this way. So she needs a plan.
But the speeches are usually given outside of the Supreme Court session, when they're in session from October through like June. And I think that the issue is the tactics work for people who are coming up for primaries. Like, I agree you'd want to kind of have an image plan, but I think it would be unprecedented in the middle of a Supreme Court term to get out there, because
It
then why
would.
wouldn't
It
all
would
the
be.
other
It would
justices?
be. It would be unprecedented. But I'll say again, if she were my friend, I would say to her, "You need an unprecedented plan. If you think it's possible, you're about to continually rule 5-4 against the president."
And my advice to her as a strategist would be, you make those announcements in your dissent, which is like in this thing, I would say, going forward, the president, the executive has the right to do this. However, because you need to explain yourself more, because I think of a Supreme Court justice going out, if you're her, or for that matter, any of them, and you start going out and doing political stuff, you are basically telling a justice that you are about to reshape the role of a justice going forward.
I totally, I mean,
And
Mark, that would
I'd be very careful about
unprecedented.
doing that, because once you do it, you have fundamentally changed the role of an associate justice of the Supreme Court going forward.
I agree
Totally
with that. I agree with you guys, but I think she needs to. Congressman Khanna, welcome and good morning. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
We want to
Always a
talk
pleasure.
about your two tweets, but I want to ask you to just weigh in on what we were just talking about. If Justice Amy Coney Barrett was your friend and she said, "Congressman, I'm worried that if I rule against the president on a consistent basis, my family will be targeted, I'll be constantly harassed and attacked," what would you tell her to do, given the strictures of how justices normally behave?
Wow. Well, Sherminsky had a great op-ed in the New York Times this morning saying that the true constitutional crisis will be if this president defies the Supreme Court. And I would just say that, this is the time for bravery and courage. And I think that the president's numbers would tank if he actually did that. Public sentiment is everything. And, that would be a line, in my view, that would be way too far. But, obviously, it comes at great risk to the court. And the one thing we have to remember is that the court is not immune from public opinion, public pressure. I actually think the lower Trump's numbers are, the more likely the court may find some courage.
All right, we'll see. I do worry about her. Congressman, thank you for joining. You tweeted two things yesterday we're super interested in talking to you about. First, guys, put up 103A, please. This was your account of what happened to you in the wake of Tuesday's speech by the president and your party's reaction in the chamber. Jim Barrett, a flight attendant, politely chased me down at Chicago airport. Quote, "Sir, I'm a Democrat, but the way the party behaved was embarrassing, made us look heartless. I don't care who is up there. You stand for the boy with cancer. Be more rational and get your act together." Next one, please. And then your follow-up tweet, 103B, please. I replied that a few of us did stand and clap, and we must be the party that still believes in kindness, decency, and trying to bring people together. So there's at least three themes and issues I can think of, not to be critical or petty or gossipy or anything negative, but just to think about the party. One is the leadership's relationship to the caucus, because leadership was not happy in retrospect with what happened. Two is the issue of how folks behaved in not standing for the most part. You and a few others did on occasion. And three is this question of where does the party stand on issues where Donald Trump seems to have the upper hand? So just explain why you tweeted what you did and how you feel the productive things can be done going forward after Tuesday.
Well, look, I felt that we should have stood when the president walked in, and some of us did. In my view, we should have had the escort committee. I mean, there's some basic norms. Stand when for the firefighter who was killed in the Pennsylvania rally, stand for the boy with cancer. But I was surprised. I mean, I was at O'Hare Airport and someone came, oh, you're the congressman from California. Usually when that happens, it's because they saw me on Bill Maher. I mean, it's the one thing that people recognize. And I thought he was going to say, oh, I saw you on Maher. And he's like, I got to tell you, I was really embarrassed by how you guys behaved. And I'm a Democrat. I've got family who are conservative, and they were texting me the whole time. And all they were talking about is, how could you be so heartless and not stand up for the boy with cancer? And then he said, I don't care who's up there. You guys stand up for the boy with cancer and get your act together. Act a little bit more rational. I mean, and I'm still a Democrat. I'm still going to vote for you, blah, blah, blah. But, he was very polite about it and just very disappointed. And I think that our party needs to realize two things. One, we will get further in our critiques of Donald Trump on firing veterans, on cutting Medicaid, on tariffs, blanketly applied, if we show that we have some decency and some willingness to support where we agree. You know, I got criticized. I went to the First Lady's roundtable a day before the joint address, and the bill that she is championing is to take down sexually explicit AI-generated images from the internet. And I was invited, I think, because I represent Silicon Valley and supported the bill. It passed 100 to 0 in the Senate, and no Democrat, not the authors of the bill, showed up. And I was the only Democrat. I mean, why not just support common sense things and criticize Trump where it makes sense to criticize him? It just seems to be more effective. The final point on this, Mark, is imagine how sad it's going to be if we set a precedent that now when we have a Democratic president, which we one day will, that the Republicans don't escort him in. Or imagine if the Republicans just don't show up and you now have the presidents in this country speaking to just half a chamber. I mean, that's not the country that I want.
Dan.
Congressman, to what extent do you think this is strictly about Trump versus upset about his policies? Like, has the party, in your opinion, moved, kind of reconciled that, or are they still one and the same?
You know, I think that they recognize that he won. He clearly this time won the 7 states and he won the popular vote. There is understandable deep frustration and concern with his unconstitutional actions. I mean, the reality is he is defying courts. He hasn't defied the Supreme Court yet. We started this conversation that what happens if he's pressuring a Supreme Court justice or people around him are pressuring a Supreme Court justice. I mean, we're not living in normal times of a president's authority. I just don't think that doing things like not standing for a boy with cancer or not showing up to the State of the Union or this joint address is the way to challenge that. There are a lot of other ways that we can make our case. So to me, it just makes us look ineffective and petty. So it's not. But the critique I got, and people can see it on the tweet, is, Khanna doesn't recognize the moment, and he doesn't recognize what's at stake, and that's why people don't speak out, because you know probably 30 to 40% of the comments I got were negative, and he's not tough enough, and that's what explains why more people didn't stand.
Sean,
do you think they? I was going to say, do you think they realize that they made Trump look like the bigger and more empathetic person, which in my opinion is very hard to do? Like, just the defiance of the party made Trump look bigger and gracious.
I don't think that's fully set in. I do think when the boy went to the Oval Office and gave Trump a hug, that is something that people have noticed. But I think it was not strategically the best way. And we had some momentum actually coming into the speech because veterans were organically going to town halls. I mean, one of the things and people don't realize is a third of federal workers are veterans, a third. And that was really upsetting people. And then these Medicaid cuts were upsetting people. And regardless of where you are on tariffs, and I think tariffs sometimes are necessary, sometimes they're not, the chaos of how Trump was doing this was upsetting people. And so I feel like, we for 2 months after Trump won, we basically had our tail between our legs, didn't know what was going on. Finally, Trump sort of overreaches, in my view, and we have some organic momentum. And this week and what happened with the State of the Union, we became the story again, and not Trump's actions. And that, in my view, wasn't effective.
Sean.
Yes, sir. This is the first time I've ever woken up and been excited to talk about somebody's tweets. So thank you for being here. And I think that your comments are spot on. I mean, the idea as a strong conservative and big Republican, I think we need a loyal opposition. And it's kind of what I wanted to get at, which is there's a lot of talk in the trades, the political trades, about the leadership of the Democratic Party, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer or whomever. And it was sort of interesting. One of the analysis was like, people were getting upset in your caucus about the smaller group that took attention away. They were upset with them, but they were almost equally upset with the leadership that allowed it to happen. And so I guess my question to you is that do you think that there's a lack of strong leadership? Back in the Pelosi days, you can say what you will about Nancy Pelosi, but she governed with an iron fist. And I don't get that sense that the rank and file in the Democratic caucus are looking at Hakeem Jeffries or Kathleen Clark and saying, guys, we can't cross them.
Well, I think Hakeem's success in the last term, the last cycle, was he kind of let Democrats find their own voice. He didn't govern with a iron fist, and on very controversial issues of Israel or Palestine, or issues about criticizing Joe Biden. Hakeem's view was, people can find their own voice. I'm going to be unified, and he was very well liked. I still think he is very well liked in the caucus, across the caucus. But the challenge is now with Trump, he really is the leader. I mean, I know people say, who is the leader of the Democratic Party? It's not whatever you think of, Josh Shapiro, Andy Bashir, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. They're not the leaders. They may one day be the leaders. Right now, the leader of the Democratic Party are our congressional leadership. And I have a lot of respect for Chuck Schumer as a legislator, but in terms of a younger, dynamic voice, that's Hakeem. So
is he strong? I mean, I guess the question is, you said he's well liked, and I'm sure he is, but there's a difference. And I that story in Politico was like the part of your caucus is upset that outburst, and Dan referred to it, overshadowed Trump, his speech and his policies. But a Pelosi would have never let that happen.
Well, I'm not sure Pelosi could have stopped every single member from what they were going to say, but Pelosi may have made it clearer what our guidelines were. And I think next time, at least my recommendation to leadership will be send an escort committee, make it clear that we should stand, that you will stand, we will stand for the president, we'll stand for the first lady. We're going to stand for stories in the gallery, which from common sense, if it feels like you're choking up or you're feeling emotional about something, stand up. I mean, it's sort of common sense. And I think those guidelines, in my view, will be given next time. But I agree with you. Like, look, this is a moment where I think Hakeem actually has more latitude than maybe he even realizes. People want to be led, and I think we will give him a latitude if he says, "Look, this is the direction we're going in." I do believe we have a very good chance that he becomes speaker, just by the law of gravity and Trump's overreach. But I think he's got to find that voice, and I hope next State of the Union we have a different approach to it.
Congressman, the other tweet you did that we want to talk to you about, the first two we did didn't surprise any of us. This one surprised us, so we'd love to understand why you did it. Your friend Gavin Newsom, in a conversation on his new podcast with Charlie Kirk, seemed to take a new position that it was unfair for trans athletes to compete in girls sports. So here's what Congressman kind of tweeted in response to someone, Alex Lee, reacting negatively to what Governor Newsom said. You said, "This is the moment for Democrats to stand for the dignity of the trans community, the immigrant community, and the most vulnerable. I've always admired my Assemblyman, Alex Lee." Is it possible to have the position that your governor seems to, that it's not fair for trans athletes to participate in female sports and still show dignity to immigrants and the trans community? Are those things in conflict or not?
I think people can have different opinions on it, but I guess I was confused by the governor's position, given that California's law is that we do not allow school districts to ban trans youth from participating in sports. That's the law that Jerry Brown signed in 2013. So is from the governor's comments, my understanding was that he was opposed to that law, and I guess. I view this as a issue that state by state, local school districts, sports by sports can decide, but we should not have a federal ban. And he was implying in that interview, at least the excerpts I saw, that he was for a ban, and I guess maybe he'll clarify it. But does that mean he was for? Would he have voted with the Senate Republicans for a federal ban? Is he saying that we should repeal California's 2013 law that Jerry Brown signed, because currently the law in California is that school districts cannot ban trans athletes.
If you were the governor of California and a repeal of that law came to your desk, would you sign it?
I would not, but I would not. I believe that this is an issue. There are 500,000 NCAA athletes at the collegiate level. There are about 10 who are trans. My view is that a lot of trans youth are playing on these things not in a very competitive way, but for belonging. And I would say let the school districts, schools figure this out, sport by sport. And with the athletic associations, we shouldn't have a blanket ban on it. That's it. I wouldn't demonize the other side. I say I understand their concerns of safety. I understand that what your concerns are on fairness. And I also don't think we should have sort of genital examinations. But I think there's nothing wrong, in my view, of talking to the other side, respecting where they're coming from. I understand my position on this is probably a 30-70 position. But I guess my own view is you take positions and then you stick to them, and unless you really they're facts that change your mind and you disagree with the other side with respect. I think what surprised people with the governor, and he'll have to explain, is it seemed to me he was agreeing with Charlie Kirk, and that means that law that Jerry Brown signed in 2013 apparently that he disagrees with it.
So it's great, and one of the reasons we like you so much is you're straightforward and you're honest. You're saying you're at a principle. You personally are supporting a position that's hugely unpopular, right?
It is unpopular, certainly in terms of the polling I've seen. That
Right.
it's a
Okay.
30-70 position.
And the governor talked with the conversation with Charlie Kirk very openly about how much he thought the issue hurt Kamala Harris's chances of winning the election. Right? Do you agree with him on that issue hurt her chances?
And we may disagree with this, but my sense is, and I could be wrong, that ad would not have been nearly as effective on Bernie Sanders, whatever else you think of Bernie Sanders, because people thought if Bernie Sanders got to the presidency, what he'd really focus on is people who've been screwed by the economic system and making sure that they had health care and they had higher wages. I think the challenge with Kamala Harris was that people didn't know what her focus would be. And the ad was effective not as much on the particular issue, though I acknowledge it was a 30-70 issue. But what was the ad saying? That she's going to be more focused on them, meaning on those issues, than on the fact that we don't have factories, that on the fact that wages have stagnated, that people don't have health care. So do I think that this is an issue that is a politically less popular issue for Democrats? Absolutely. Does Donald Trump take politically unpopular positions, like let's pardon January 6th folks, and all the crazy positions he's taken? Yeah, but he takes a lot of 30-70 positions, but people know that's what he believes. He doesn't flip-flop on core things, and in which he believes. And I don't think the issue is whether you take a 30-70 position. I think it's, do people think you are actually saying what you believe, and are you respectful of people who may disagree, and where are your priorities?
I want to turn it over to Sean, but just name a position you think Donald Trump is 30-70 on that he stands with.
Pardoning January 6th folks who
good
police.
Yeah, gun control.
Good example.
There's a
good example. Good example. All right, Sean.
Not gun control. It's 80-20.
I've got one random that I want to ask you, Dan. If you want to stay on topic, I'll go second.
No, I mean, I think, Congressman, how do you the party's talking about we need to move forward, and there's so much energy in the base, right? Which is what kind of has fueled Tuesday night a little bit. How do you feel? Like, have you heard from members of the caucus since last night? I mean, is there a feeling that the people are ready to kind of stand on principle and push back, or does this issue still divide the caucus, you think?
This issue, meaning the
trans issue.
Oh.
I mean, sorry. Are we going to a different?
No.
I didn't know. Sorry, you should.
Maybe another way to say it, because I'm trying to be respectful, because we know we're going to lose you soon here. Is your sense that the caucus agrees with you more or agrees with Governor Newsom more?
My sense is that the caucus's position on this is it should not be a federal ban. There should not be state bans. That that local folks, UBU, sort of local communities can decide, local school districts, local athletic associations can decide sport by sport, case by case. Is a sort of federalism, a reverse of what.
Oh, I like this. So you local control. I like.
Yes.
Okay, let's keep
No,
That's
going.
what- That's what Senator Baldwin is
That's what
pushing
Tammy
to.
Baldwin. Yep.
And it's an incredible, with all I say respectfully, it's an incredible dodge. But
Can
you
I-
at least have the courage to say what your position is on the local. If it were up to you on the local, you would allow them to play.
Up through high school, from K through 12, yes. I mean, obviously after high school, and even in high school, I would look at it sport by sport with fairness. But I would be very deferential to the
Sport by sport or athlete by athlete.
Well, both. I mean, I think there has to be a standard of fairness, which you know, I mean, I don't want to get into all the details, but my understanding is that you have to be on actual hormone therapy. There's some standards of fairness. I mean, there has to be. Look, there's this a value of inclusion, and then there's a value of safety and fairness. Those are not. Those are both important values. I believe that you should not have a statewide ban. We don't in California. That school districts with athletic associations should be making these decisions. But that most times, in 99% of the cases, the trans athlete in question is not violating the fairness. I mean, we hear of these cases at the extremes. I don't think that's what's going on in my community. So my view is that that it contributes more to the demonization or the stereotyping of these trans kids were a very small part of the population.
Can I just ask you? This is off topic, but there's a question. There's a quote in Playbook this morning that it's timely. So your colleague Jim Himes from Connecticut, and this is not partisan. So he says, this is a direct quote from him. There's no question that somewhere between 6 and a dozen of my colleagues are at a point where they don't have the faculties to do their job. Do you agree with that?
Wow. I wouldn't. I don't know 6 or 7. But maybe I'm not talking though. I guess I would have to know.
You know 3
who they were. I mean, I was one who said Feinstein should not have been in the Senate at a time where she wasn't showing up, and so. You know, it would depend on who he's talking to.
I know. I'm just saying that's a bigger number. It's one thing to say 1, right, or 2, but when you say between 6 and a dozen, that's a pretty big number of members of Congress that, quote, don't have their faculties together or to do their job, as the direct quote. So I mean, that to me shocked me that it's, like I said, it's one if there's a 1 off or a 2 off that everybody kind of knows but doesn't say anything. But to suggest that up to a dozen members of Congress don't have their faculties to do their job seems like a rather large number. And I didn't.
It's a large number, and it's a low bar, right, for Congress. You got to go vote something. You're not talking about nuclear engineers. I haven't seen that. I mean, I'm a straightforward guy. If you ask me about specific people, I mean, maybe I'm not thinking about it that Jim has in mind. I mean, Jim's a very smart guy. He's a Rhodes Scholar, so maybe they don't have measure up to him. But you know, it depends on who he's talking about.
Put up the Peggy Noonan quote, please. Congressman, I really want you to react to what Peggy wrote. And Peggy's premise of her column today is the country needs a strong Democratic Party, that she's cheering for the Democrats to come back. And she said basically that the Democratic Party is too stupid to change. The party isn't based on Tuesday night. This isn't serious people. Their job was to show an alternative. They'll continue to lose for a long time. You're thinking a lot about how to keep the party from losing for a long time. Do you think Tuesday night was an aberration or an indication of a fundamental problem, as Peggy does and I do?
Well, look, I think we often have recency bias. Anytime someone wins, we think, okay, they're going to have a long-time majority. I mean, people after January 6th thought that Trump would never come back, and 4 years later, he wins every swing state. So I think the one constant in current American politics is people are pretty upset at the status quo, and the alternative party often has a chance. And I'm actually quite hopeful about the Democratic Party. That said, we need to have certain things that we course correct to deserve victory. And I guess the one thing I would say is we don't have to copy, in my view, the most extreme behaviors. I mean, with Ronald Reagan, used to say, character is king. One of the things people liked about him, one of the things they liked about George W. Bush is they just came up, or certainly I think about Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or most of our leaders, they come off as decent people. They come off as kind people. They come off as people who have empathy. They're self-deprecating often. And I just think of most people are like that. You grow up, they want you to be patriotic. They want you to be decent. They want you to be kind. They want you to look for certain common ground. It's not complicated. Now, Donald Trump gets away with like insulting John McCain. Fine. He's a phenom. It worked for him. Didn't work for DeSantis. Don't think it's going to work for Vance. Don't think it's going to work for anyone else. And so my view is that the Democratic Party should be the party that says, we're going to get back to decency. We're going to get back to inspiration, bringing people together. We're going to show an alternative to Trumpism.
Congressman, I know Congressman's got to go, but real quick, you and your boys are fans of the Warriors, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Want to show you Steph Curry from last night in case you didn't see it before you go and just react to this.
And that was the goal when you were down 22. Steph from midcourt. Oh, come on! Did he ghost him on that too? Oh my goodness, Curry!
Celebratory. Congressman, we know we need to go. We kept you an extra minute. Apologize for that. Grateful to you for coming on and explaining all that in your normal forthright manner. And we welcome you back to two-way anytime your schedule allows.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Take care.
All right. Always wish we had more time, but we got in a fair amount. I'll go to your questions now. Again, sorry, Congressman had to go. We managed the time, maybe not flawlessly, but bring folks in, ask about whatever you want. As always, tell us where you are. For folks who don't know, what's on your mind, Mr. Desmond, welcome in.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Good morning from San Antonio. One of the things that a lot of what we've talked about really troubles me is with the proliferation of executive orders, and it didn't start with President Trump. We find ourselves lurching back and forth from, when Biden came in, he countered every one of Trump's, and now that Trump is in, he's countering everything by Biden, but we have no continuity in any of our policies. And I think in the long run, that can be catastrophic for really keeping our national goals in line in defense and foreign affairs and so many things. And it's very troubling because on all I see, and I think Congressman Khanna showed this, we're losing all of those people that are reasonable and willing to take what I would consider the traditional political process of compromise, and it's my way or the highway, and in the long run, it makes it very difficult to sustain any kind of serious progress.
Sean.
I think, look, I agree to some extent with you. I mean, one of the problems with the executive orders, I think the president made a good point the other night in what he said at the State of the Union. All we needed was a new president because we'd been gaslit and lied to about the border, told that it was closed, it was open, there was nothing that we could do. And the president clearly showed that in the first few days. And the evidence is apparent, not just in the number of border crossings that are down, but the entire attitude of people now not coming in the first place. That being said, I believe wholeheartedly on an issue like immigration in particular, we need to codify these wins in law. One of the reasons that the president can't do certain things right now is because the court is saying there's a law and there's appropriations and there's this and there's that. So my belief on the Republican side is on an issue like the immigration in particular, we need to use the Republican House and Senate that we have while we have them and lock in a couple of these wins. But I think the problem with executive orders is that they go like, a windshield wiper. You put a new a new president in, they wipe out the previous ones and they do a bunch of their stuff. And the next guy comes in and they wipe out all the old guys' stuff and then put their stuff in. And I mean, it's a little bit of whiplash. So my advice to our side in particular is if you like what President Trump is doing, lock it in while you can.
Dan.
Yeah, I agree with Sean. I mean, I will just say the border crossing started dropping pretty precipitously under Joe Biden at the end. Just a fact. But look, it is true. And I think part of it is the executive branch has been taking power from Congress for the last, really since 9/11 more and more. And at some point, Congress needs to stand up and reassert its rights, its co-equalness, if that's such a thing. Because if you want to make it, lasting, you've got to codify it into law. And we're going to see here, whether on DOGE or immigration or a lot of this stuff.
It's funny, Dan, you brought that up because I've asked a lot of the members of Congress on my show about the DOGE stuff. Like, why didn't you know about this? And they would say, well, the agencies and the departments refuse to open their book. And I mean, that's part of the no. But my point is,
I know.
That there's an erosion of power, and then what happens is they know they can push back, and if Congress doesn't have some level of asserting itself in the process, then they're going to pay the price for it.
Look, and I do want to just say, I've said this numerous times, and I'm going to say it again. The idea that the spending is fraudulent, folks, it is federally appropriated. It is negotiated.
No, that's not entirely true, though. It's federally appropriated. But when they got rid of earmarks, they blocked money over, right? So yes, the money's blocked, but what the agency did with it post getting rid of earmarks was allowing those agencies to make decisions that should have been made by Congress.
I hear you, but what my experience with that stuff is, do all 535 members know? Absolutely not. But do a dozen or 6 on each side of the aisle on that sub appropriations committee know where it's, and they horse trade 50. You want 50 million for condoms in Mozambique. I want 50 million for X deal. That is how they build the appropriations process, book every single year. Now they're all hiding. Nobody wants to say I knew about this stuff, but it is a bipartisan. In fact, of all the committees, appropriations is one of the most bipartisan. They absolutely know where it is.
Jack, thank you. Great question. Appreciate it. Let's quickly take a break from questions. But again, if you want in the conversation, raise your hand. Sean, winner of the week.
I think the Trump comms team for how they handled the lead up and response to the joint address. That doesn't just happen. They executed those guests swimmingly. I mean, like it was precision, how well they got. We're talking about them today on a Friday. That's good staff work. The president might have orchestrated it and sold it, and he did. But at the end of the day, that is excellent staff work, and they need to be commended.
Sean, Dan.
Yeah,
Dan.
I was going to say, whoever choreographed the president's box, I mean, just every one of those stories was, spot on. It humanized Trump. It was a job well done, and I think it set a new bar.
The correct answer was yes. You're both right. Sean, loser of the week.
I think it's I'll give, if Dan's going to take Democrats, I'll go with Zelensky.
Okay.
I didn't know. I just didn't. If he went first, it depends on.
Sure. Yeah.
Although he actually could be the winner because he's ultimately, he's not totally. He's going to get something from Trump. Hakeem Jeffries, he just lost control of the caucus, and I'm not sure he has it back yet.
Can I get a B, Mark? I will say this. It is personally, as a guy who doesn't like change, I'm really pissed that Skype is going away May 15th. I don't want to get onto Microsoft Teams, and they announced that Skype was being eliminated. And
let's put together a consortium and buy it. Keep it going. To me, loser of the week is Hakeem Jeffries. Yeah. Your question to Congressman Khanna was gentler than I think you might have done under other circumstances, but he has lost control of the caucus, and he is so afraid of the Liberals that
the idea that he's a nice guy, I get it, but that's not.
But he got the job. He got the job in part, and Pelosi supported him in part because she saw him as someone who had good ties to the far left, but would do as she did, which is stand up to the far left when necessary, which she did sometimes.
But he didn't come out of the far left. I mean,
no, correct. That's why she liked him.
Right.
That's why she liked him. But he has ties to the far left, and now he's bowing to them in a way that's not productive. Forget ideology. Forget if you believe in the DLC model or not. He did to say to the caucus in advance, don't become the story. Make the story Trump's impact and then to destroy any messaging through the conduct of the caucus, it's mass insubordination, and
You
it's
look
on him.
But
You look
I
at
actually
Ro Khanna, right? He just sat there and said he would stake his principle on a 30-70 issue. I mean, I disagree with him, but I believe that he's principled in his stances, right? And that's what you need to sell your caucus on. Guys, I'm with you on these issues, but here's a smart strategy. That's a guy, look, if they listened to Ro Khanna, they wouldn't be dealing with the issues they are today, talking about why didn't you stand for a kid with cancer? They need someone to get up there and say, we know what we stand for, but don't be stupid.
But I think the challenge is, Mark, I actually don't think she picked him for his tie. I mean, there are ties that I think are just obvious on the face value, but he rose through the corporate ranks of New York City from his career. And she liked the fact that when she thought about who could go to donors, who could kind of potentially bridge the two communities, it was Hakeem. And she also thought that he was going to be more patient and take the job when she was ready to give it. All the other young Turks.
I totally agree. I agree with I agree with everything you said. I didn't think I didn't mean to say she chose him for his ties to the left. She chose him more because of his ties to fundraising and the center. But she knew also that if she wanted someone like that, it had to be someone who also had ties to the left. When he was chosen and anointed, the left didn't squeal at all. They didn't say, "How dare you choose a centrist corporatist?" They said, "Great, he likes us. We can deal with him."
Well, I actually have a different take, Mark. They chose him because they said he's going to be so desperate to keep us happy that we're going to own him. And that's the problem. They own him because he's so terrified. Pelosi was of them. She was of San Francisco. She had done all the work on AIDS. She had done things that she could point to say, I'll get on a microphone and go toe-to-toe with you with my history versus yours. And she had Maxine and the delegation with her. The problem is the base looks at him and doesn't trust him.
Correct.
He's the beggar.
And they're not afraid of him.
No.
He looks, a tough guy. I'll tell you this, he looks exhausted. Every time I see him on camera, he looks exhausted. And yesterday he was asked about what Gavin Newsom said, and he gave this incredibly gobbledygook answer. He has a great reputation. He's a brilliant guy. His historic in his rise, but this moment calls for understanding and navigating the politics of the caucus. And Tuesday night, I can't think of a parallel. We still don't know why everybody. Congressman Khanna says he stood, and I'm sure he did. I'm sure he's not lying about it. And there are some pictures, but he's one of the few who stood. We still don't know if everybody stayed seated, or as far as I know, did they stay seated organically, or was that the leadership instruction?
Oh, I think it was organic.
Yeah. As far as we know,
bottom line is,
I don't know.
You look around. And
but why didn't Hakeem Jeffries stand up for DJ?
Right, I say you set the tone. People look at the leadership on that stuff.
That's right though. You look around and your leaders aren't standing, you don't stand. There's a reason when those guys all look on the Republican side or on the Democrat, depending on what party's in power, they look at the rostrum and they go, "Oh, you're supposed to stand now. You're supposed to sit now."
There's one of two choices. It was an order, which was a crazy order, or it was organic, but he participated in it. He himself sat there.
If Hakeem or Schumer got up, people would rise.
Correct. Do you guys want to change your mind?
Clark or any of those guys had risen, the rest of them would have.
Do you guys want to change?
Around like a bunch of second graders trying to figure out what was the right thing to do.
Do you want to change your answer to loser of the week and agree with me that it's Hakeem Jeffries?
I said Hakeem.
I'm asking Sean. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I thought no. But I said if you guys take Democrats, I'm going to take.
Yeah, he did.
Right, but I'm not saying Democrats. I'm saying Hakeem Jeffries.
Fine.
Okay. Sean, what are you looking for this weekend?
I think we're going to, obviously coming out of the crypto meeting today. I mean, look, we got a lot of uncertainty on what's going on in some of these business issues. So I think what the president, like any weekend now, it's going to be what does he say or do over the weekend?
Dan.
Israel. I am surprised that they were so unaware that we were talking to Hamas and trying to broker a deal, which I will give Trump credit. I did not think they would be consistent here in trying to broker peace. And that, of course, would require Hamas. And Israel wants to move. They're angry. They do not want peace right now. They think they have them by the you-know-what, meaning Hamas and Iran are weak. So I'm watching to see if Israel goes in further.
I screwed up. I thought yesterday was Friday, but now today is Friday, and so we're getting close to the Sabbath. And I'm still expecting there to be military confrontation, but maybe not. Maybe not today. The other thing I'm looking for is I'm really curious to see if this Newsom story goes away or continues into the weekend. Either he gets
Can I say
protested,
one
whether
thing
he
on the Newsom
revises
thing?
and extends. Yeah.
During the entire Trump term, when people left office, there was this thing that the mainstream media perpetrated about humanizing Trump people as if like we were like aliens. The idea that Newsom, like that conservatives are embracing him because he's going to be a good guest. To me, it's like, why are we now responsible for
Well, he
humanizing?
wasn't the guest; he was the host.
I get no, but fine, whatever. I get the point is he said, I want to have everyone at CPAC on my podcast. That's because clearly he's making a political decision. That's the smart lane for him to head into 2028. My point is, why are conservatives now participating in mainstreaming Gavin Newsom?
It's a good question. Do you know who Charlie Kirk said brokered that interview?
And you know the level of, I mean, I have a lot of respect for what Charlie's done and built, and I get it. But Charlie has a show, and I get why he's doing it. But I'm just saying that, like,
Sean, I have to tell you, I couldn't disagree with you more about this. I think it's great that those two guys sat down and had a conversation.
Oh, no. I get it. But I'm saying that, like, it was defying reality. Gavin Newsom's acting like somehow he's this mainstream. He's not Ro Khanna.
But you know what?
He's much more moderate than you think. I
think Charlie did it because, and I watched, all on social media yesterday. Kirk started trolling Newsom, highlighting all the progressives attacking Newsom. So he's stirring the pot. Like,
here's some good news. I'm on Charlie's show later today, and I'll be turning the tables and asking him what happened. How about that?
Yeah, well, that was my 2 cents.
Look, I said it on X. I really want to see how Newsom handles this. Both the idea that he talked to Kirk and the idea and what he said, because he is going to take it. Jay Paul came out, said she was disappointed. Newsom saying it. The community is attacking him. If you are going to be a legit 2028er, you've got to navigate this. And everyone thinks California is a super progressive state. I'm skeptical, Mark. You're way more bullish on him than I am.
No, I'm not. Oh, no.
I want to see if he can thread this.
I'm bullish on his skills. I'm not bullish on his chances.
I'm not bullish on his skills.
By the way,
I am.
One more thing to point out over the weekend, because we're about to lose an hour, but gain more sunlight. I think I said it in our little group chat before the show, but just for the sake of everybody, go listen to how Donald Trump answered the question on daylight savings yesterday, because we often talk on the show about, Mark says it, or like 80-20 or 70-30 issues. It was a brilliant dissection of how he thinks about issues. And I know it's like a one-off because it was daylight savings, but he literally walked through his thinking on it. And it was brilliant if you want to understand how he approaches it.
I agree. If we hadn't had the congressman on, I would have shown the whole thing, because I totally agree with you. It was not only brilliant, but as you said, it's a window into how he thinks about issues and how many issues he knows stuff about. Like, I didn't know he knew so much about that. Just to clarify, Dan is not bullish on Gavin Newsom's chances to be the nominee or on his skills. I'm bullish on his skills, but not bullish on his chances to be the nominee. Just so everybody understands where we stand. All right. So we spent a lot of time with the congressman. Apology, and we had technical difficulties at the top. So apologies. We only got one question in. Always try to get as many folks in as we can. Please come back on Monday at 9 a.m. for more. Also tonight at 6 o'clock, my show will be on, and you can come there and ask me whatever you'd like. Sean, what do you have on tonight?
Bill O'Reilly. And if you don't know, Bill O'Reilly has been very, very critical of Elon Musk. And I'm going to ask him why.
Yeah. Great. All right. Then a reminder, next week, Tuesday night here in Gotham City at the Olive Tree Restaurant, high above the Comedy Cellar, the world's most fabled comedy venue. If you want to be part of it and you're in New York, go out to 2a.tv/table17. Michael Moynihan.
The guy with glasses? Which one's the one with glasses?
Michael Moynihan, our new colleague, will be there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize. Okay.
Norm Dorman, who owns the Comedy Cellar and the Olive Tree Cafe, will be there. I'll be there. Mystery guests will be there too. It's a live program. It'll also be available to you on Zoom on the two-way platform if you want to watch it remotely. But if you want to join us, the food there is fantastic. Go to 2a.tv/table17 and you can purchase a very limited number of tickets. Very limited. But this is a new program. It's going to have music. It's going to have comedy. It's going to have Michael Moynihan. You won't want to miss it. So please go buy your tickets now. And as I said, I'll be back tonight at 6, Sean at 6, and then also Monday, we will be back at 9 a.m. Thank you for watching this morning extravaganza. And our thanks, of course, to Congressman Khanna for joining us from the road. Have a great day, everybody.
And I'll work on the sunlight coming in.